Morning. Sorry. Here we go. For those that don't know me, once again, my name is Steffan. My gorgeous wife, Dawn, most of you know. This is a journey, and not knowing what a journey is, to me personally, after studying with Joe and coming here for over 8 years now, I had questions for myself, and 2 weeks ago, Pastor Jared was nice enough to meet with me and ask me if I would be willing to step up and share my story, an event in my life, and of course I said yes. So bear with me, please. It's a topic I don't really like to talk about. So my question is, looking back in my life now, I have this question of how Jesus played a role in my life. How many people he brought in to, how many people he brought into my path. You know, some were just frequent, and some were blessed to stay a while. An example, I always see Jesus. I look back on all the events in my life now and I see Jesus. And when I was in my early 20s, I was a manager for a company in Southfield, and I had this kid. His name was Tony Mavis. He came to work for us, and he came up from Farmer, Ohio. Never even heard of Farmer, Ohio. I had to look it up on a map. And this kid showed up. Just a suitcase and everything in his car. No plans. I'm like, man, that took guts, and I admired that. And it just so happens at that time that my friend Scott, a good friend of mine, had just purchased a condo, was looking for a roommate. So I ended up introducing them together, and they became roommates. Tony worked for me for a short while, and then ended up transferring to one of our offices out in Arizona where he had family. But I look back on Tony, and I don't know if it was just coincidence, if it was just good timing, or if it was Jesus working through me to help put a roof over this kid and help keep him safe. I know now it was Jesus. Tony moved on, and I kept in touch. We became good friends. But life goes on, and you get busy. Your priorities change. And my priorities changed. See, my mom, she was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. And if you don't know what polycystic kidney disease is, it's where cysts form in your kidneys. And basically, there's only 2 treatments, and that's either dialysis or a transplant. And being the youngest of 7, I didn't hesitate. There was no thought. There was no weighing pros and cons. I jumped at the process to go through and get tested to be a donor. And the process is pretty simple. They do blood work. They give you a scan and to get started. And it was the results of those scans that I learned that I couldn't be a donor for my mom, because I too had carried the same trait and had the same disease. My mom, she is by far the strongest woman I've ever known. I've only known her to cry literally 5 times in my whole life, and that was at the passing of family members. And the time I told her that I couldn't give her a kidney, and I had to tell her why. So she didn't cry because I couldn't give her a kidney. She had cried because that trait had been passed on to me. My mom, she went through a lot. She ended up having her kidneys, both kidneys removed 2 different times. And every time she went under the knife, I could always see just the light in her eyes dim a little. You could see it, how it took its toll on her. And about this time, my son Daniel was born. And my mom she was on dialysis, and every Sabbath, after dialysis, my dad would drop her off at my house, and I would get her situated, get a blanket on her so she was comfortable, and I'd lay my son in her arms, in her lap, and she would just stare for hours and just smile. The dimness in her eyes were bright. I look back now and I see Jesus at work. My mom, she fought the good fight, as they say, and she ended up losing the battle. She passed away she managed to make it a couple years. She ended up passing away in August. And, life goes on. I changed careers. I took a job in sales, and I used to travel. And I would literally cover the state of Michigan. And funny thing about sitting in a car for a long time, stuff happens. And I developed a blood clot behind my knee. And this was quite a while ago, so back then, the consensus at the hospital was to put me in a bed for a week on a high dose of heparin. I spent the week in the hospital. I went home. When I left the hospital, though, the damage was done. From being on blood thinners and a high dose of heparin had caused the cysts in my kidneys to start seeping, start bleeding out. So this disease that affects most adults in their mid-50s, early 60s, started to take its toll in my early 30s. I left the hospital in July, and by the end of October, I was pale white. I had no energy, and I had lost quite a bit of blood. I ended up back in the hospital, and that's when my hero came in, my brother Paul. I call him my hero because if without him, I wouldn't be here. Back then, they used to keep the charts at the foot of the bed, in a little hanger. And my brother Paul walked in. He had just recently finished medical school. He had a practice, and he looked at me. He looked at my charts. And that day, I was taken out of that hospital, and I was I entered William Beaumont Troy Hospital. So my brother looked at me, looked at the chart, walked out of the room, and made a phone call. I was under a new hospital, new care. I was under the care of Dr. Jennifer Raffin. I know for a fact no one in this room remembers this, maybe Mom. My brother had called me about 6 years ago and told me that Dr. Raffin had a severe, diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And I don't know why I didn't think about it. I hung up with him and I called Mom, Gail Kincaid, and Back then, we used to have a little prayer box that, we'd pull up front, pull the names up. I think actually Jason was drawing the names that day. And her name was Red. And I kind of had a chuckle because I was sitting over there and looking around, and people were literally trying to look around and see who this lady was. But I was also humbled. See, I didn't believe in the power of prayer until that day. See, everyone in this room prayed for a total stranger. And I know the power of prayer is there because today she's healthy and she's still practicing medicine. Very blessed. Once again, Jesus at work. I had spent November and December of that year in the hospital. I had multiple minor surgeries and trying to figure out a course to correct what had happened. But dialysis was in my future. And I remember New Year's Eve of that year. You ever been in a room and when you're alone, but you have that feeling you're not alone? I don't know why, but New Year's Eve, I was alone, laying in this bed, and I kept staring at this stupid chair against the wall at the foot of my bed for hours. I don't know why, I just stared at it because I didn't feel like I was alone. And New Year's had come and gone, and I'm still staring at this chair in the middle of the night, and finally I got frustrated, and I just said, I'm not done. I got life to live. I want to live. Tell him that. A few days later, I was released on dialysis, trying to figure out how to get my strength back, get back to life. Come March, I got to meet the transplant team. I was strong enough and my labs were good. And I was nervous. 5 guys in one, you're meeting with 5 individuals in one day. Excuse me. And I'm sitting in this room waiting, and the first one through the door is my hero. My brother Paul. He was there the whole day with me. Didn't know he was coming, he just showed up. I wasn't scared or nervous anymore. See, to me, that's Jesus at work. After going through meeting with the transplant team, they determined that the kidney on my right side was fairly large, and it needed to come out in order to make room for a new kidney. And they wanted to do it as soon as possible, so a few weeks later, in April of that year, I was once again laying in a pre-op room and nervous. And I remember I was nervous and scared. I thought about my mom every time she went underneath the knife. But then I heard a couple nurses laughing and chuckling, and then I heard the peanut brigade coming through, and the nurse pulled back the curtain, and all my brothers were there. Now my brothers, they're all good people, and for as long as I can remember, whenever we get together, we like to make fun of each other and tease each other, just to laugh. Love to laugh. And it only took my surgeon, Dr. William Spencer, to come in with his magic purple marker, pull back my gown and start drawing. And they started seeing the lines and the notes, which way to cut. And that's all it took for to set them off. And They had the nurses laughing. They even had this surgeon. This guy was a brick. They even made him laugh. And I remember laying there, and I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't nervous. I had peace. So that's Jesus at work. My surgery was supposed to be, was scheduled for 4 hours. I was on the table over 12. 12's the max. They didn't realize the severity of the damage until they got inside. That 8-inch incision turned out to be about from 2 inches from my spine all the way wrapped around to my belly button. See, my kidney had grown to the point where it was literally the length from my hip, and it had progressed up into my lungs, and up under my rib cage and into my lungs. It was pressing on everything. So they ended up removing. I lost a little bit of the lung, a little bit of the liver. My ribs on my right side, they're gone. Didn't realize the extent of it. I woke up in the middle of the night. Once again, woke up in the middle of the night. I was back in my room. I opened my eyes, and all my brothers were still there. I'd like to think that I can handle pain. Not irritating pain, like, you get a cut or you hurt your back. I mean real pain. But I can honestly tell you I've never felt anything like that. My brothers left, and I was once again alone. It was raining at night. And I just remember watching the rain hit the windows. I don't think it was the painkillers. There were some good ones, but I don't think it was. But I remember thanking God that I was still here. My brother Steve told me that they all stayed just to make sure I opened my eyes again. That was April. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I got out. Had to go back to living, right? Dialysis and work, had to get back to living. Man. The end of November came. It was literally, it was either the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I got the call. This is the transplant team at William Beaumont Royal Oak. Congratulations, we have a donor. We have a surgery scheduled for the 28th of December. Please be available at any time in case we need further information or etc. They don't tell you who your donor is, just in case, for safety reasons, the individual changes their mind or circumstances change. I tried not to think about it. I was excited, but at the same time scared. The 28th came, I went to the hospital. I remember being wheeled into pre-op as they were wheeling my donor out. I couldn't see who it was. I had the surgery. The following morning I woke up. I woke up and I still feel it. The tech's pulling the tubes out of my chest, and the real nice one that they stick in your jugular, that one, I can still feel that today. And they cleaned me up, and the nurse came and asked me if I was up for a visitor. Now back then, I don't know how it is now, but back then it was like a total sterile room. It was masks and gowns, and I said, yeah. Honestly, the only one I thought it would be my brother Paul, being affiliated with Beaumont, being a doctor. And I still can remember not even realizing it. I don't know if it was because of the painkillers. I remember propping the door open. I remember seeing the wheelchair come around the corner. I just stared. And staring back at me was my long-lost friend Tony from 10 years. It didn't dawn on me at first that he was my donor. I think it was. My family says, they always ask me if I said thank you. And I didn't say thank you. I asked him why, to be honest with you. He looked at me and said, I gave you a kidney so you could get off that machine and start living your life again. I always thought that Jesus was working through me to help Tony all those years ago. When it turned out, he was working through Tony to save me. That's Jesus at work. See, that's the feeling you get when you're touched by God. That little bit of peace. And as I learn on my journey, I've come to be greedy because I want more. And I'm very blessed because just for being here the last 8 years, I've learned a lot. And I met a lot of great people. And I've extended my family in many ways. But now it's time to take the next step. So that's why next week I'm taking the plunge, so to speak, and starting the next journey toward Christ. I hope everyone comes out and celebrates. And those at home that can't make it, please come share this day. Thank you.